So I'm at the Church of Our Lady St Mary at South Creake in Norfolk, which is one of the most characterful churches in the county, I think. It's probably in my top 20, I would say. It's a beautiful, wide, perpendicular interior of the 15th century. The height of those arcades as you come in. Wonderful textured flooring, old floor slabs, ledges, brass matrices, lots of local Norfolk paments. And let's come and have a view east. It has medieval rood screen, medieval pulpit, and lots of really lovely Anglo-Catholic furnishings. This church was an Anglo-Catholic church, it still is to a certain degree, and has wonderful 20th century Anglo-Catholic furnishings. It's country Catholic, not too extreme, some of which are a little exotic. But this church has very much been under the hand of the Protestant reformers at various points. So look here, for example, is the 15th century font. Originally had images of the seven sacraments around it, which have been rather brutally hacked off. Seven sacraments around the bowl and images of the saints in niches around the stem, very violently destroyed. But the loss of those images has been rectified with quite an eclectic collection of 20th century images. So, for example, here we have our little scroll, St Edmund, pray for us, St Edmund of East Anglia. I'm not going to comment on the quality of these images, by the way. They really are quite esoteric. St Edmund of East Anglia being shot full of arrows. And then on another pier here we have Charles I. As some Anglo-Catholics like to refer to him, King Charles the Martyr. And let's go down the north aisle. So you've got those modern images cheek by jowl with fragments of medieval ones too. So in plenty of bits of medieval glass in this church. There's a figure of an apostle from the Apostles' Creed. Lots of other fragments of inscriptions that once adorned the windows here. On the top of this window we have the figures of angels in the tracery lights. There you go, which have survived. I just love the warmth and texture of this church. And when the sunlight comes through the windows here, it really sets the place on fire, picking up the areas of colour. Look at this floor. We're just passing the 17th century parish beer, which is dated 1688. Many hundreds of people would have been taken to the grave on that bier. In the parish coffin, dressed in their shrouds, and below is a 13th century cross slab. And then next to that is a 20th century image of St George, dressed up in his cope, with the silver lamp alight beside him. And then more medieval glass. A figure of a kneeling donor, one of the people who paid for the glass in this church. Two angels with scrolls, above that the Holy Trinity. There are canopies, 15th century canopies. And then we have St James the Great and St Andrew holding his saltire cross. And St Helen holding the wood of the cross, and next to her St Apollonia holding a tooth in St Pincers, emblem of her martyrdom, the patron saint of dentists. And we've got a side altar here dedicated to St. John the Baptist. Rather eclectic fabrics on that, and then a figure of St. John the Baptist. It's a rather fancy camel haircoat, that one, gilded. And then into the east window here, bits of 14th and 15th century glass. On top of the 14th century figure of Christ crucified, and above that a rather fancy angel. And in the side lights also more angels and other fragments. There's so much to see in this building. It's very close to Walsingham, hence the Anglo-Catholic influence here. There's a figure of St. Michael. And we're at the head of the nave now. I'm just going to cross in front of the nave altar, and notice here there's some altar rails, and these have houseling cloths which are to be used by the communicants to prevent any scrap of the Holy Sacrament falling on the floor, used to catch any crumbs that might fall during communion. So a pricket stand here, and a rather lovely image of Mary, the Mother of God, Our Lady, here. Really is stunning. Now just turning into the nave for a second. The pulpit is a 15th century wine glass pulpit, and it still has considerable traces of its original colouring on it. A sort of vaulting pattern on the bottom here of this coving, and then there's bits of gilding and green and red. May have been figurative work on here. If there was, it's mostly scraped away. And then of course there's the rood screen. The rood group above the rood screen was brought here in the 1980s. Very fine, from Ipswich. But the screen itself is the original 15th century screen, the lovely panel tracery. It's a dado of the screen again with traces of colour on it, red and green. It really is a very fine screen. No evidence of any figurative painting here. Didn't always have that on Norfolk screens, though many Norfolk rood screens do have it. And into the chancel. And we pass over an indent for the brass of a priest, smack in the middle of the chancel, so presumably a rector of the South Creake. We've got the remains of 15th century benches. A little image of St. John Vianney, the curé d'art, beloved of Anglo-Catholics. Very nice bench ends. These little benches have the remains of linen fold panelling at the front. And in the window here, an image of Christ the King. So lots of little shrines and images right throughout this church. Two rather battered but once clearly very blousy standard candlesticks, no Baroque fashion. And up to the high altar. Now last time I came here, there was the remains of what's called a hanging pyx, where the sacrament is suspended from the ceiling, but that has now been replaced with a tabernacle on the altar, which is a bit of a shame. And next to the high altar is a nice little lamp, silver lamp hanging for the sacrament. Behind this is 17th century tablet, so it's really mixing it up. And then this fantastic 15th century sedilia, seats for the clergy with angels and Tudor roses above. And a delightful banner here. Queen of Heaven, pray for us, it says. The image of the Mother of God, and Virgin and Child. And this is, I think, by Enid Chadwick of Walsingham fame. This is very lovely. And you've got riddle posts here around the altar. When you have these posts like this, they're called riddle posts. So I'll probably see it better on the other side because of where the light is. And a couple of what are called Nuremberg angels, a name given to them by Watts and Co, who made them in the 20th century, early 20th century. They're rather nice. And here's the view looking west. So it really is a delightful church, very full of character and texture and colour, muted tones, but also some brightness from all these lovely little shrines. Everything just seems at home with all the furnishings seem quite at home here, as if they've always been here. Apart from that thing there, I'm not going to talk about that. So things were beyond the pale. A nice little side altar here again with riddle posts. It's a nice wooden painted cross and candlesticks there, rather sweet. And we have a little shrine of St. Margaret of Antioch there. And these blobby things. Yes, okay. Apparently this is a Calvary group. I might edit this out, as I'm not being very good at being critical. Oh, looking towards the east across the nave there. It's a very, very homely church. It's beautiful, it really is. And when the sunlight's coming in, it's filled with the light, which just picks up those little touches of colour in this church interior. It's rather muted. It's just delightful. This very hefty 13th century armoured chest. Quite a thing to behold, with 5 locks on it. Really is something. Let's just take one last look east along the full length of the church building. To soak in the atmosphere here. And this is the church of Our Lady St. Mary at South Creake in Norfolk. Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.